And the more I've been around them and the bigger names I've worked with, they have just as many problems, just magnified. You know, we might have a problem with our mortgage, and they have a problem with things way bigger than that. You know what I mean? Like tenfold. Because
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's truly because I've been around celebrities I've had to take to rehab and have to do interventions, and so I mean, there's always a challenge at different levels.
Hey guys, if you missed out on the last conference in Nashville, Tennessee, you don't want to miss out on the next one. It's April 28th through May 3rd, Orlando, Florida, the Gaylord Palms Resort and Convention Center. You made a mistake missing the last one. You don't want that to happen again on this one. 5 days of some of the best training you're ever going to experience packed into one event. We have an early bird special right now, $50 off. Use 24 early bird on our website, streetcop.com. Look for the conference, click the link, register today. If you want to get significantly better at this profession in 5 days, don't dare miss out on the 2024 Street Cop Conference.
111, 110.
You training to be a street cop?
put the wheels in motion for me to start wanting to work. I worked off duty, so a friend of mine I met was a retired sergeant from Beverly Hills. Started working security jobs for him, and probably after about a year, I kind of figured, okay, this is all about relationships, and being a servant leader and paying attention to what people's needs are. So I processed, got my own license, and did all my open up my own business. So it really became a time management thing. I love being a cop, but the security started taking off, started building accounts. So I just left after 12 years of full time, but I transitioned. I became a reserve with the LA County Sheriffs, and so I'm still a reserve with the sheriffs for all these years. I still been doing cool stuff with them, but the security just took off, and that really became my business. And I support police departments, and I support all kinds of endeavors with law enforcement, but that really became my full-time calling.
What was Sammy Davis Jr. like for those who need to know, like me?
Very humble guy, very quiet, but yeah, we actually spent some, I don't, it's one thing how I know how to switch gears. For like social cues, when I'm doing security, I don't do a lot of communicating, but he personally, we spent the day before doing some press, and he actually wanted to talk, which I was surprised. Very nice guy, very humble. Sadly, I think it was less than a year later he passed away. And crazy, talking about my mom was always impressed with certain people. There was a picture of us taken while we were doing the parade by the press, I guess, and it ended up in People magazine. So that ended up being like a big deal for her. But he was a nice guy, very nice guy.
So you start this security business, and it starts to take off.
Yeah.
Tell us about that a little bit.
So I think I was pretty fortunate. It goes back to the relationships. So my friend, who I made fast friends with, I met him when I was on duty at a Premier. He owned a private limousine company, transportation company. We hit it off, and what happened was, once I told him, "Hey, Charlie, I started this security business," and he said, "Oh, great, I'll refer you my clients," and literally they just started coming in. And one thing I really figured out in the security business is all about attention to detail and what your client wants. And I really picked up on great listening skills by listening to what people want, as well as when I was a cop. I had great listening skills, but a lot of people don't listen in life, and so I clearly figured out what people wanted, and I met their expectations. But I not only met their expectations, but I exceeded them. And I wasn't your typical bodyguard per se, the meathead. I was always like logistically thinking about ingress and egress and hotels and evacuation plans and what we're doing. So the referrals just started coming in. And once I started picking up certain key names, like the guy that ran Sony Music at the time, his name was Tommy Mottola. Once I secured him as that was a referral, and his wife was Mariah Carey. You start taking care of people at that level, and it almost becomes a referral business then. So
Wow.
that it really took off. It did pretty well. Yeah.
What did they like the most about you, and why they continue to refer you around? Is it just you, or you have a group of guys?
Well, I had a group of guys, but it was also a tough business to scale. I think what they were like, I think they liked my service. I don't know if they liked me as a person. I always kind of just, I never engaged them that much for they'd say, "Oh, Bruce is just a nice guy." I think they thought I was professional. I took care of business. But I was telling a friend of mine recently, I've had a client for over 20 years now, and I said I've probably maybe said 60 words in 20 years to him, because it's just his assistant calls, "Hey, Mr. Smith is coming in town. I know I'm going to meet him. I know I'm going to take care of him." And so that's what I really mastered, how to be around people for days on end and not have conversations, but know what they needed. I knew that I was going to be sitting at the bar if they were at dinner at the table. I knew to find the best entrance to get in and out of places. And I knew how to intervene when someone, like maybe a crazy celebrity was coming. I mean, a crazy fan was coming prior to that, intersecting them before it happened. So I think that's why I was referred a lot, because I was just quiet. I took care of business, and I didn't interfere with their life. A lot of people get in this service industry, and they have a tendency to overstep their bounds or interfere or overtalk, overthink, over whatever. And it becomes a burden on the client instead of an asset,
Who, I don't know if you're allowed to mention names, but who are some of the people that you've worked with?
Some people like pretty Charlie Sheen for some years before he got a little sideways. Gosh, I'm trying to. Courtney Love was a client for over a decade. Mariah Carey, and the list goes on. I mean, I traveled with a lot of people. Ricky Martin, Mark Anthony, and I still have a couple clients. And they're not well known. It's funny, they're well known in the public just because of their wealth, but they're not per se actors or actresses or artists, but they're more they own big companies that are public and people know who they are.
Do you have Do you have favorites?
I have people that I think are very kind, have been, I say this too, like Arnold was a client on and off for 20 years with different events and premieres if it was under Warner Brothers. Um, God, favorites is hard to say on on a podcast, right? Um, I think there were some people like Charlie Sheen was always great, always humble, always giving, always went out of his way to make sure I was okay, which was not his job. It was my job to make sure he was okay. There's some that I think, there's a saying, sometimes you wish you didn't meet your heroes or, kind of get a truer picture of them. Listen, I always like my old partner used to say, not all money's good money. Sometimes I end up connecting with someone that was like, they're tough, they're emotionally draining, or they're literally verbally abusive, not to me maybe, but to their staff. And you see how they conduct themselves, and you're like, I don't know if that's something I really can really deal with for a long period of time. I did pick up, funny enough, when Mike Tyson got separated from Don King from their business deal. I picked him up for a while because my friend was managing him and regrouped and did a lot of things for him over over a period of 2 years while he was regrouping and getting his fight career back on track.
What was Mike like?
He was always nice to me. I mean, he had his main guy, like right hand man, who was technically a bodyguard assistant, but we did all the peripheral stuff, making sure everyone stayed out of trouble, kept the undesirables out of the area, from gravitating back towards him. I think that was one of his downfalls. He had a lot of undesirable people that were a lot of takers. You know what I mean?
I probably am not going to get an answer to this, but were there any not so favorite people? And maybe you can not say names, but maybe name some stories. That might be the best way to go, because the last thing we need is being handed lawsuits for exposing.
Yeah. I think there were people that are very demanding. Some artists, some females that would have expectations. Not. I just watched how they would treat other people. Like you go to an award show in the dressing room. Literally, there's artists that literally it's not made up when they say they have their lists, their mandates for when they go to a show, and it's Fiji water and it's green M&Ms and it's this, and to watch people go into a mental breakdown or tantrum because they don't have certain things. And I thought, God, be grateful for what you have. So there's a couple female artists that are top pop stars that were really brutal on everybody. And I don't want any names, but yeah, there's some characters. I think they should be grateful that everyone started out somewhere, right? I think they always got to reflect back when they did their first gig or they were singing for free. But people lose sight of that very quickly when they have success. Not everyone, but a lot of people,
Good friend of mine in the town that I live in, he actually runs a catering company for like movie sets. So I get to scoop on all these things, and he tells me who the real bad ones are. But I know one that he talks about all the time is that he was very fond of Jack Black. So he said that Jack Black was just about the nicest guy you could ever work for or with in your entire life. He's like, he was so humble that he didn't even understand how the whole food thing worked, and he didn't want to bother them. He's like, oh,
situations. They told me in the vehicle, listen, I like the occupation I'm in. I like being a singer or an actor, but I didn't really want the fame. And some of them truly don't. They're just like, they like their craft, right? They like singing music. They like making movies. But sadly, some of them, I take care of clients that they can't leave their home. They're just behind gates and food's delivered and whatever, and occasionally I take them out and it's always with the sunglasses and hat. And you actually have to feel a little sad because they can't just be themselves. They can't just, hop on a bicycle and ride down by the beach. So I admire that when some of the artists and people I've worked with that are just like, hey, I'm kind of trapped. I mean, I enjoy my craft, but I don't like the life that has brought me.
Yeah.
So.
Listen, I mean, I get it at police events, which I'm so thankful for, but it gives you a real context as to what it must feel like. Even at our conference, we have an annual conference. Probably about day 3, I just kind of had to disappear a little bit. I was just between having to run the conference, perform at the conference. I just needed a break to be by myself a little bit and just relax. And by the way, I'm so and again, this is not me trying to say that I have this big ego. But you also knowing now some celebrities through the work that we've done and having some context and the friends I understand it, and they are just, I can't emphasize enough, just regular people like everybody else. They're just regular
Absolutely.
human beings, and I see them so different. And it's very rare that I get starstruck because I think now I'm been around it so much, that I'm quite comfortable with it.
Yeah.
I just get comfortable with it. I just do. And I think that
you have to be comfortable with it. Yeah. I look at, they put on their pants the same way, whatever you want to say, but yeah, everyone has their own challenges. And the more I've been around them and the bigger names I've worked with, they have just as many problems, just magnified. We might have a problem with our mortgage and they have a problem with things way bigger than that. You know what I mean? Like tenfold. Because it's interesting, truly, because I've been around celebrities I've had to take to rehab and have to do interventions. And so, I mean, there's always a challenge at different levels,
Yeah. So it's a sad thing at times. I know that people don't want to see it that way, but it must be very difficult. It must be a lot of fun. I watched the thing with Kevin Bacon. It was very funny. And he said he put a disguise on and walked through a park and nobody recognized him and nobody knew who he was. And then the host said, how'd that make you feel? He goes, oh, it sucked. It's just so much better being Kevin Bacon and get recognized. which is kind of fun, but it is comical because, it is enjoyable, I guess, to take time out of your day to make somebody else's day and just have that extreme humility. And I learned, I got to teach some of the people here as well, as we grow as a company. And the examples that I've learned my best lessons from are those who I admire. And when I got to meet them, how nice and humble and polite they were to me and having me feel like I was $1 million, to them. It's very, very interesting.
Hey guys, follow us on all social media platforms to include Instagram, Twitter, Facebook group. We have so much information going out every single day, and we don't want you to miss out on any of that stuff. So check it out. Go give us a follow.
So tell me about your entrepreneurial journey. I mean, you've got the security thing going, limo thing going.
I think I learned the entrepreneurial thing from, don't get me wrong. I mean, a police career is amazing and the benefits and all, but I quickly figured I wanted to do more. And I think my father was a good example. He was an entrepreneur before the word was even probably relative, right? He was a union contractor, but then started his own contracting business and electrical design business. And so I worked for him. So I always worked a couple jobs. And so it was kind of natural when I became a cop. I wanted the security business and I started doing consulting. So it's a great feeling, I think, to be an entrepreneur. There's different kind of stress, right? Because you're paying your own bills and there's no guaranteed check coming every 2 weeks. But I think it's a great, great thing. And how else can you create wealth, right? Not being an employee. So I like it. And I like that every day is different being an entrepreneur. And I think there's so many opportunities. And I always work on building relationships, even to help other people with their businesses. And in turn, sometimes it comes back, tenfold.
What's cooking now? What's on the horizon for Bruce Cardenas?
What's on? Obviously we didn't talk about Quest Nutrition, right? The journey there. Did I tell you about that?
Oh, yeah, I want to hear about that too. That's cool. Yeah.
Well, the only reason is I'm saying as part of my journey, I was in the middle of the bodyguard business was going great. and I met the founder of Quest at the gym. She goes by Quest Creator. Early on, they were only a few months old, and I remember she shared some protein bars with me. A couple weeks later, I saw her and said, hey, those bars were great. By the way, if you have any extra product, my friend's doing a celebrity golf tournament up at Riviera Country Club, and they scrambled and got me a few boxes, and I ended up, this is a good entrepreneur story, because I really had no intentions of really doing anything with them. We were just friends, and they gave me some protein bars. I got them in the hands of some celebrities. My friend was doing the publicity at the golf tournament, and she got some pictures, and it was before social media. There was no social media at all. Facebook, it was just starting, but everything was like these online, not blogs, what they called, like pages. So she ended up getting some content from me. I got it in the hands of the founder, and they're like, wow, a lot of people. I ended up getting on a set of Extra because we're doing the security for Mario Lopez, he's a great human being. He actually talked about us on camera. He was giving product out. We filmed at a mall outside. So it just evolved where 9 months later, Ron, the founder, took me to lunch and said, hey, we're going to start paying you. We're stealing from you. You're doing way too much for us. And they're just nice people. I just like helping them. And I was doing it on the side. I had my security business going and started helping them. And then he put me on the payroll. And something kicked in with the work ethic thing. Once I started getting paid a little bit, I was like, shoot, now I really got to prove myself. So I did everything and anything the company needed because there was no structure. It was very loose. So I was really, I was an intrapreneur inside of a company. I was like an entrepreneur, but I was inside of a company. So I call it intrapreneur. I'm actually writing a book about that. And I literally did anything needed. I built out the events department, built out all the relationships. I became the relationship guy with all the first responders around the world, Marines, police departments. We support all these charities, but I orchestrated it. 9 years later, I'm the chief communications officer, and we sell to Atkins for $1 billion. So I was one of the top, 6 guys in the company. And that was just all on being a servant leader and bringing value. So we sold that, and then we started a company called Legendary Foods, which, if you can imagine, healthy Pop-Tarts, 20 grams of protein. So it's another form factor, better macros than a Quest bar. So we started Legendary, started a ketogenic dog food company. And then for myself, I've now invested in a couple other companies, a company called Blackwater, BLK Water, and a couple other food companies. And that's it. And I'm just doing more podcasts, started to do coaching. And I ultimately want to do more public speaking in conjunction with a couple books. So that's kind of my journey now. My feet are still in the security business, but I want to do more. I feel like I owe it now to kind of give back or help people. I love helping newer entrepreneurs that are starting out to help them either figure out, hey, fail fast or let's make it work. But there's a lot of keys to making a business work without dumping a bunch of money into it,
Was Tom Bilyeu part of Quest?
Tom Bilyeu was part of Quest. So so Shannon hence goes by Quest Creator. She made the first 13 flavors in her kitchen. Ron was the chairman. He had the business, ideas. Tom at the time was a copywriter at their software company. When they started Quest, they rolled Tom into the picture, and he basically was sent over to run Quest. So he was the president, and he was in charge of sales and marketing. Tom exited the company 3 years before we ever sold. So that's another story for another time. But yeah, he exited. There was a split, if you will. And so he went on, and he's well known because he started his show, Impact Theory, the podcast. Yeah, that's it.
Well-known guy. Actually, one of his things I live by, he talks about what the experience of entrepreneurship feels like. And it goes a little something like this. It feels like you're getting your teeth punched down your throat, and then you're cutting your throat and you're gargling on your blood. And I was like, yeah, that's it. That's what it feels like. It's truth. People don't realize that. They think that, like, I always tell people, I'm like, when somebody says to me, oh, I want to open a business, I got to ask why, because you're in for punishment. I mean, you better get ready and strap, not deferring people from doing something, but just understand that what is your pain tolerance level?
Right.
And you got to really know what your breaking point is. And, again, there's theories. I don't think you should have a plan B, but you got to have some fucking pain tolerance. And I got to tell everybody that, like, if there is one variable, it is emotional intelligence. Obviously, you're going to have innovation and some skills and some problem solving. I think a major thing is problem solving.
Yeah.
But EQ, emotional intelligence, emotional quotient.
I use that all the time.
Yeah. You're going to have a lot of that, man. I don't know how you're going to be successful without a ton of that. I guess it's possible, but man, it is certainly something that I think is a major ingredient in your ability to progress.
Yeah, that you're spot on. I mean, I think it's a great. I mean, being an entrepreneur is great. I mean, but there's some challenges. There's some stressful days and meeting obligations, and then you lose clients, and things happen.
It's rough in the sense that it's very unpredictable. There are only
Yeah.
so many forces you can control.
Yeah.
You've got to know how to react, how to maneuver, how to resolve fast. And I mean, the new game for me is because it feels like it's feast or famine, is I'm trying to be more of a farmer now and be able to harvest crops year round. And I think that's a very good lesson for most people, is to understand that you shouldn't really depend on the variable of the environment to determine whether or not you're going to be successful or have steady income. You're going to have to essentially, and I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, I'm going to try to keep this as vague as possible. I knew somebody that owned a pizzeria restaurant. And, I came in and one of my favorite places to go to, and I'm really good friends with the owner. And I said, he was worked up. He's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, you can deliver pizzas. You don't deliver pizzas. That's the resolution here. You can still make them, right? You got the staff. You could just offer delivery now.
Yeah.
And so in that really didn't compute, and it never came to fruition. But the reality is like, there's always a solution to the problem.
Yeah, for sure.
There just always is. There's always a solution. I don't know if you could pose a question to me. I'm not talking about you, Bruce, but anybody in general, without me knowing the industry well enough. But there's always a solution. So the easy solution there would have been, we got to start delivering.
Why didn't he? Too
You know?
much.
I don't think it's too much. I think that I think the business was bought from somebody else. So it just needed to be ran the same way it was ran. And anytime there's some diversion off the beaten trodden path, for most people who don't know how to resolve things, or maybe a little afraid or can't handle or try to figure out what the next move is going to be, I think somebody can buy a business and that exists, that procures revenue, and not touch it. And it probably does just what it does forever, consistently, right? You bought an electrical company, you got 5 electricians, you got your 500 people that are your clients. That's where all your revenue comes from. As long as you can maintain standards, still show up, there really has to be no innovation. But if you're going to try to take that thing to 55 electricians and 10,000 customers, it's a lot of figuring out that needs to happen for something like that to occur. And so people don't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, scale, but like, even I think a lot of people have a hard time with understanding money, numbers. I think there are people who are artists who think they can run a business, but are just so artists at heart. They really need to consult with somebody, have a coach, or maybe get in bed with somebody who may be more of a business person.
Yeah, a lot of artists are visionaries, and you need an integrator to make sure that the wheels are moving and it's properly run,
For sure, man. I mean, there's no question about it. So if you can't generate revenue, and I think Kevin O'Leary says the best, it's a fucking hobby, right? You're not in business. You're in a hobby.
Right. That's so true, though. You always got to be thinking about ways to reinvent yourself, reinvent the business. What other opportunities are there? More, cash flow, other streams of revenue.
Dude, I don't know if you're in the same boat, but like everything I do or everywhere I go, I think about where I'm at and what they're doing with this business. And I got to tell you, most recently, what I've been noticing is like, I don't know much about the industry, but I have 4 little kids. So we go to like these party places, and we were at one recently, not too far from where I'm at here in Jersey. And I went in and, the place is run like shit. It was a cool place, but it was run like shit. It was filthy. I almost felt like they abandoned the place. Whoever owned it was like, just like, forget it, let it die out. We got our money.
Wow.
If it keeps churning. That's not the only place I've seen like that. We've actually seen quite a few of these places now closing. But it's interesting. Every time I've been to these parties, which I've been going to for years, I got a lot of kids and they're very young. The places were almost neglected in the sense that they were being run by like teenagers. There was never bosses around.
Yeah.
So when you say you forget about these companies, people like think that I don't know all the ins and outs, but I look at a business and I'm like, man, there's so many finite details. Like when I go to your restaurant or your fucking bagel store or whatever it may be, and your bathroom's a piece of shit with a leaky sink.
Oh, I mean,
those details are important that people aren't considering because And it reflects, you can tell why the business is not doing well or why their product is shitty. It's good enough. It's making enough money, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. That is a lot of pride and ownership. Keep it first class.
I don't stop working on the finite details of everything. We were working on the conference calendar for 2024, and it's coming out. Bruce, I've been looking at this fucking piece of paper for 3 days on how to make sure it flows so goddamn perfectly. And that's the details I'm talking about. Like and people say, well, is that the priority? Yeah, it's a major event for us. We have over 1,600 in attendance last year.
Oh, wow.
I'm anticipating well over 2,000 in the upcoming year. And so I look at this thing and I have to envision what it's going to feel like to make sure that when you leave our event, you're like, man, that was fucking phenomenal. And dude, I'm just racking my brain on how to make it better and better and better every year. And I can tell you, this year's going to be fucking.
Are there multiple conferences or just one?
I do one annual right now.
Yeah.
I'm not staffed. I'm not good enough yet to do more than one annually.
Yeah, you have to send me details of what I can do to support it. I like doing conferences and supporting them with products and brands, and it's always the experience. I go to conferences sometimes, and I'm thinking, you spend all this money, and the nicer touches are missing, or even the seating arrangements. There's all factors involved with a good experience, from sound to light, and it's
Bruce, we fuck it up. Like we fuck it up. Like
Yeah.
I have a DJ. Bro, people like last year, actually this year. So this year we did it in Nashville, and people were like, I'm like, yeah, how was the conference? Like, it's the best 5 days of my life. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like you're like training? Like, no, dude. This was like the best 5 days of my, how many times I heard this was the best 5 days of my life?
That's great.
Yeah. And that's not me being unrealistic. Like I'm constantly taking temperature to make the fucking feel better. Like we take your surveys and really put thought into how do we make it better? You're having communication from your instructors, staff, whatever it is, to the person. If they're not listening to the radio, maybe there's some repercussions, 10 push-ups, some stupid shit that you do.
Right.
just to get the brain, and I'm not the expert on how you're going to get the brain trained to this, but like, you have radio communication, so however that works. So this is just the beginning stage of this. Now, like, let's start working in some foot pursuits, man. Let's start walking in some high stress situations and communicating on the radio. And then after your foot pursuits, let's take those radios into like your real life fighting scenarios, however you guys are doing them. Hopefully Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is starting to really make its way in. But even your red man shit, you're still archaic and putting the fucking red man costumes on and swinging fucking foam batons them and shit. Like, why don't we start implementing some radio communication into situations where you need to communicate and you could do things like, getting people used to call sign distress signal location and just being able to get that out.
Yeah, it should come naturally in their sleep. You bring up a lot of good points, because I remember shit clear as day when I was a recruit and my training officer would stop and say, "Where are we?" And I'd be like, and if after a couple months, I mean, I would mentally register street signs. I knew what block we were in. And when he asked me, "Oh yeah, we're at 4,000 Foothill Boulevard." So if we needed help, but that's things you do in the academy with the radio and all the training you do, and you're getting out in the field, you already have a second nature. Now, when you hear the radio, it can be almost silent, and you're like, "Oh wait, they're calling me. I can hear our unit number."
All this stuff can get fixed in the academy. And the fucked up thing about field training is it's not a game. You're not playing. Now you're on the field.
Yeah.
And the reality is if you guys run into a situation where there are lives at stake and the new police officer has not received training on how to handle this, it's day one. I mean, dude, last kid I field trained, he was in a pursuit day one.
Wow.
In a pursuit day one. And I'll tell you a funny story real quick. The funny story is he ran into the woods. I was screaming to come back, calling him back out of the woods because, dude, he was so amped up to get this guy. And I said, you got to just slow it down just a hair. We got 20 units with us. We're gonna find him. We're gonna corner him, and we're gonna do this thing methodically. And sometimes that was about just chasing rabbits.
He thought he was a canine cop or a canine dog. He wanted to go track him down.
Wait, listen, dude. No, like great. Kudos to the enthusiasm, but I'm like his mother's gonna kill me, right? In my head, I'm like, his mom's gonna kill me. Let me get this kid out of the fucking woods. And so after the whole thing was over, we caught the guy, and essentially he goes, dude, I think I lost a magazine in the wood. Day one, right? Yeah. He lost a magazine out of his pouch, like a fully loaded magazine. But dude, he went into the woods. It's not like this is like a playground. Like, bro, he ran 50, 60 feet into the woods, heavy brush. So I said, listen, don't worry about it. I'm the guy here. Don't worry. We'll get to the boss. No worries. You're with me. We're good. I walk in, I see the shift commander. I go, "Hey, Lieutenant, we got to get a magazine out of the. I was a firearms instructor too. I said, we got extra magazines on the shelf. I didn't have a key to sometimes I had a key to it when I was actually active with the firearms unit, but it was a part-time gig. So I said, we got to get a magazine from out of the thing. He goes, well, I'm going to give him one, but can you guys go take a look for? He goes, well, why don't you go back out into the woods and look for it? I went, well, LT, he's down a magazine, so just go get the one out of the thing, give him a fucking magazine, and then we'll go look for it. He goes, okay. He goes, all right, that deal. I goes, that makes sense. I said, just give him the magazine. I gives him the magazine. We walk out the side door, and I cut right. We had a quick check across the street from us. Yeah. And we go in a quick check. I said, do you drink coffee? He goes, yeah. I go, get yourself a cup of coffee. I go, we got about 20 minutes to kill. He goes, why? I go, we're looking for the magazine.
Shit.
Yeah. So he goes, what do you mean? I go, bro, if you think I'm going back into the fucking woods in August to get covered in ticks and fucking mosquitoes, you're at over a magazine with 12 bullets in it that no kid or no human being's ever going to find. The earth is going to eat it. And it's going to go into the fucking core. Yeah. I go, you're out of your fucking mind. So I never come back in. We came back. We showed back in like a half an hour later. And I said, no luck. He goes, oh, I'm glad, but I appreciate you going out looking. I go, anytime, brother. I got you.
That's funny.
Yeah, true story.
That's a good one.
Well, Bruce, it has been a real honor having you on here and meeting you. And the stories are fucking cool. And you're a real cool guy. And I hope that we get to maintain a relationship. We've got the jerseyness.
For sure.
One another. Yeah. And I don't know if you have any good, kind parting words for the Street Cop family and the Street Cop community, which we appreciate and love tremendously. Yeah,
listen, I've been a cop for now, if I counted the reserve time, coming up on January, it'll be 35 years. It's whenever, I remember when I was a full-time cop and people bitch about the system It's a great career. It's a great job. It's great benefits. There's great leadership. You know what? I always look at the positive in all the organizations I've been part of. There's going to be that 10% that aren't the greatest, or they're I always say this too, when law enforcement is that 10%. I say there's 10% in every occupation, right? Doctors, lawyers that are, undesirable. Unfortunately, law enforcement, it's that 10% that when they do something bad, it's magnified, right? Because it's on a body cam or it's on CNN. But at the end of the day, it's a great occupation. It's a great job. And I always felt like I always gave back to the community in some way. Like I was involved with the DARE program. And I feel like if you're going to get involved with civil service like that, do more, exceed people's expectations, and show the community you really give a shit. You know what I mean? Because we can all complain about the union and a lieutenant and bitching about cost of living raises, but at the end of the day, we're paid to serve the community, and I just think people should embrace that more, because it's at the end of the day, I like to feel good giving back, and I hope that our fellow law enforcement officers and first responders feel the same way, because it's a great feeling to give back to the community.
A wonderful opportunity to do something great for the world every single day of your life.
Yeah. And every day's different, right? You're not going out of roll call. Anything could happen, right? Good and bad. So I think it's a great, I encourage young people, because I know right now law enforcement agencies are struggling to find good qualified people. It's still a great career. Regardless of what you think or hear on the news, it's still a great career.
I think that it's temporary. I think there's a lot of theories behind what we're experiencing right now, but I also think there can be a lot of solutions on the side of law enforcement and their leadership and politicians to work with what we've got. Yeah. And so I think that we need to, as a organizational culture, begin to introduce a lot more technology. And I would actually argue probably a lot more civilian intervention. And just hold off with me for a second, in the sense that if we are short on cops and nobody wants to join and be a cop, we must keep our cops available for the most important work to do. Mm-hmm. So I think for a lot of the walk-in shit that comes in that is really just, nothing super controversial, or even sometimes maybe controversial. And let me just walk you through this a little bit. I think that we're going to have to begin to ensure that people are using online reporting systems to free up civil servants. So if you have your neighbors, I don't know, dude, you lost your cell phone and AT&T wants a police report, go online, it generates it automatically. You write your own report. You can hit print.
Yep.
Something like that. I think a lot of walk-ins that are theft walk-ins and stuff like that. It's hard to say, but I certainly think domestic violence can be given to somebody who is trained in domestic violence, walk-in domestic violence, not actively hot situations, but walk-in DV, got a problem here. And then there can be police intervention once most of the legwork is done to come in, and if it warrants it. I think a lot of it, and we started actually at my old agency, started implementing a lot of civilian work, and it was actually a lot better because it freed up the rank and file to answer the fight calls, the gun calls, the robbery calls, the significant crashes. I mean, you see it in cities that don't have the personnel. I know for a fact there are cities in New Jersey that are big cities that if there's no injuries, the cops aren't coming. As crazy as if there's no injuries and cars aren't getting towed, you're not getting a cop. And they're just telling you on the phone, it's it. Exchange information. Let your insurance company figure it out later on.
That's the policy all across California. Yeah. Just if there's no injury and no one's getting towed, just exchange information. Yeah.
Dude. And people are just way too spoiled with the police, where they need to be available for more important things. And I think a lot of stuff can get fixed. All I can do is voice how I think you can fix it and let the cards fall where they may, because you and I both know that politics are very, very deeply ingrained in this profession. And without changing the hearts and minds of those who can change actually the things that matter, we'll just keep voicing it, and hopefully somebody hears one day and implement what we can.
I love that idea though about online reporting, to do you lost your cell phone, or all those things could be online reports instead of stacking up the lobby at a local police station 6 deep waiting to make a police report. That's actually a great idea.
And a lot of people
haven't done that.
Yeah, no, the people are doing. There are agencies that are already implementing that, so I don't want to take credit for it, but I think a lot of people really need to encompass that. And I think that there can be a lot of things being done. You know, I just, there could be a lot of ways we could look at what we're doing and try to use the personnel we have appropriately. You know, like when you come in, like, here's another thing for somebody who comes in to report something. Oh, I was called by some scammer who tried to get my social security card. Right. Okay. You write a report. Like, we're not calling Zimbabwe Police Department. Nobody's looking into it.
Exactly.
We'll collect it. It gets sent off to some central registry if there's a major federal organization or task force that's doing those things. But outside of that, like, you know, there's not much we're going to be doing for that stuff.
Right. Exactly.
You know, so there's a lot of things. I would argue that 25 to 40% of the stuff that comes into the police department could probably be handled by people who had some simple training, right? This paperwork that ties up the cops way too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people are like, oh, you're going to take away police jobs. Like, we can't fill the police jobs. So there's a problem here. You might see
100%.
You might see in a recession that you might see a lot of these police jobs start to fill up. I think you're going to get people who need work, know that's a recession-proof job for the most part, and might be starting to consider going to the law enforcement field for the security of it.
Yeah.
You get major layoffs, man, and people are hurting. You're going to have cops, filling up. It was crazy, man. You know, it's an interesting time, but it doesn't mean it's the end. You just got to figure out how to get through this time, and that's why it takes people who have some know-how to help resolve some of these situations.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bruce, it's been a pleasure, man. And after we end this, we'll chat a little bit about the conference and some opportunities there.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right, Bruce. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, hold on.
Hey guys, check out our upcoming training at streetcop.com. Don't forget, we have 50 instructors nationally teaching a variety of topics. These are the best classes you're going to experience in your career. We make sure of it. You're going to love it. I guarantee you're going to be thankful that you went. Check us out at streetcop.com for all upcoming classes in your area.